Sarah Dawson, a woman with Down syndrome, walked into the bank full of pride, ready to open her first savings account, the result of months of hard work. But instead of support, she faced public humiliation at the hands of insensitive employees. Just when everything seemed lost, an unexpected voice echoed through the hall, and to everyone's surprise, it was a famous Hollywood actor. What happened next left everyone speechless. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story waiting for you. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Sarah Dawson's small apartment, lighting up the simple but cozy space filled with personal touches. Family photos adorned the walls, and colorful sticky notes with reminders were carefully scattered around. That morning, Sarah was especially excited. After months of saving part of her salary as a server at a local cafe, she had finally gathered enough money to open her first savings account. It was an important milestone for her, proof that she could take care of herself, even when the world insisted on underestimating her. She grabbed her notebook where she had written down every step to open the account, checking each detail one last time. The pages were filled with scribbles and reminders, illustrating her dedication to learning and doing everything correctly. "Today is the day, Sarah. You can do this," she told herself in the mirror, repeating the phrase like a mantra of courage. When she arrived at the bank, the scene was chaotic. Lines stretched to the door, people were complaining about the wait, and the staff seemed stressed, trying to keep up with the day's demands. Sarah took a deep breath and walked in, clutching her folder of documents tightly. She felt the curious gazes of some customers and employees, but kept her focus on her goal. She joined the line, and as she waited, she quietly rehearsed what she would say to the teller. She mentally reviewed her notes, making sure she wouldn't forget any details. When her turn came, she was greeted by Laura Stanton, a staff member with a tired and impatient expression. Laura barely looked up at Sarah before asking in a disinterested tone, "What do you need?" I'd like to open a savings account, please," Sarah said with a shy but hopeful smile. Laura took Sarah's documents and began reviewing them quickly, but her expression shifted to one of boredom and impatience. "You filled this out wrong here and here. We can't accept it like this." Laura pushed the papers back towards Sarah. "You need to come back with someone who knows how to do this." Sarah blinked, confused. She was certain she had followed all the instructions correctly. She tried to explain, "But I checked. Everything is correct. I followed the guide exactly." "Look, sweetheart," Laura interrupted, using a condescending tone. "There's no point in insisting this is wrong. Come back with a guardian or someone who can help you." Sarah felt her hands tremble slightly. Laura's tone, so cold and insensitive, began to chip away at her confidence. Even so, she tried again. "I'm my own guardian. I can prove." Before she could finish, Laura rolled her eyes and, exasperated, announced loudly enough for everyone in the bank to hear, "You're wasting my time. Let someone else handle this, okay?" Silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to Sarah, who, embarrassed and humiliated, lowered her head. Her face flushed, tears threatening to escape. The weight of that moment felt overwhelming. Still holding her documents, Sarah noticed the people around her whispering and looking at her with either pity or disdain. The humiliation was unbearable. But amidst the tension, something unexpected was about to happen. Sarah remained standing, trying to summon the strength to withstand the humiliation she was feeling. The murmurs of those around her were like a weight pressing down on her chest. Clutching her documents tightly, she tried to remind herself why she was there, her independence, her accomplishment. But at that moment, it all felt distant. "Please wait over there," Laura said, pointing to a nearby chair. Her tone was still cold and impatient. Sarah walked to the seat, feeling the weight of the stairs around her. Sitting down, she began to organize her papers again, going through everything to figure out what she might have done wrong. I did everything right. I did everything right, she repeated to herself. A few minutes later, a bank manager, Marcus Morgan, appeared. He walked towards Sarah with a smile that at first seemed friendly, but soon revealed a patronizing undertone. Hello, Ms. Dawson. I'm Marcus, the manager. I was informed about your situation. Why don't we have a quick chat? He said, inviting her to follow him to a table in a quieter corner. Sarah took a deep breath and followed him. Sitting across from Marcus, she began explaining again why she was there, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. He listened with apparent patience, but as she spoke, his smile shifted to something more condescending. I see, he interrupted mid-sentence. But I have to ask, are you sure you're ready to manage a bank account on your own? Something like this can be complicated. The question hit Sarah like a blow. She swallowed hard but replied firmly. Yes, I know how to take care of my money. I worked hard to get here. Marcus leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands together on the table. Look, I'm not saying you're incapable, but our protocols require certain formalities. For example, your documents don't have a signature from a legal guardian. That could be an issue. Sarah furrowed her brow, confused. I am my own guardian. I can sign. Marcus let out a short, uncomfortable laugh, as if trying to soften the situation. Well, technically, yes, but we need to make sure everything is appropriate. Why don't you come back another day with someone who can verify this for you? Sarah felt indignation rising within her. She knew she was being treated unfairly, but before she could respond, she heard murmurs from nearby customers. Some were silently defending her, while others made discriminatory comments. She probably doesn't even know what she's doing here, muttered a man in line. Why do they let people like that try to handle complicated things? Another replied. Sarah tried to block out the comments, but their words echoed in her mind, cutting deep. Still, she persisted. My documents are correct. I read everything before I came. I want to open my account today. Marcus sighed, visibly exasperated. Wait here. I'll check on something. He stood and walked over to Laura at the counter. From her seat, Sarah could hear bits of their conversation. Marcus was speaking in a low voice, but his attitude was clear. He shook his head, saying things like, We can't waste time on this. It's obvious she can't handle something like this on her own. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes but refused to let them fall. She didn't want to show weakness, even as everything around her seemed to crumble. Suddenly she heard the sound of a click. Turning, she saw a nearby customer taking a photo of her with their phone. This is just so sad, the person commented to someone else. Sarah lowered her head, ashamed. She didn't realize her situation was becoming a spectacle for others. She felt alone, exposed, and trapped. As Sarah tried to compose herself, the image of her sitting there, visibly shaken, began circulating on social media. The impact of that moment was about to take on a dimension no one in the bank could have predicted. Amidst the chaos of the bank, seated quietly in a discreet corner, was a man trying to remain unnoticed. That man was Keanu Reeves. Disguised as he often did during his rare public outings, Keanu had come to the bank for personal matters, but now his attention was fully focused on Sarah. He had been watching the situation unfold from the beginning. Laura's cold tone, Marcus's condescending behavior, and the humiliation Sarah endured. Every word and gesture had been carefully observed, and Keanu now seemed to be weighing his options, deciding when and how to act. Meanwhile, Sarah remained seated, reorganizing her papers for the 100th time. She was trying to hold on to her dignity, even though her red, tear-filled eyes betrayed the toll the moment had taken on her. Keanu watched her with a serious, almost somber expression, clearly unsettled by what he had witnessed. People like her are always underestimated, aren't they? An elderly man nearby commented, noticing Keanu's focus on Sarah. It's painful to watch this happen. Keanu gave a small nod but said nothing. His gaze remained fixed on Sarah and the bank staff. He knew that when he intervened, it would have to be at just the right moment. Across the room, Marcus and Laura were still talking. Keanu could hear snippets of their conversation. Unproductive, time-consuming, not worth the effort. Each word added to the frustration building inside him. He adjusted his cap and took a deep breath, visibly trying to stay composed. Sarah, on the other hand, mustered her courage and approached Marcus again, clutching her papers tightly. She tried once more to make her case. I've done everything I was asked to. Please, I just want to open my account. Without even looking up from the documents on his desk, Marcus replied coldly. I've already explained. Without a legal guardian, we can't do anything. You'll need to come back another day. But I am my own guardian, Sarah insisted, her voice trembling. Marcus raised his hand to cut her off. Miss Dawson, I've told you already. Come back another day with a legal guardian. Do I need to spell it out for you? Sarah stood frozen for a moment before turning to walk toward the bank's exit. Each step felt heavier than the last. The murmurs of those around her continued, some casting pitying looks, others showing disdain. Keanu stood up suddenly, his voice cutting through the murmurs with calm authority. This has gone far enough. He began walking toward the counter, his steps deliberate, yet filled with an unmistakable determination. As he approached the desk where Laura was about to dismiss Sarah once again, he stopped her movement with a quiet but commanding voice. Can you explain why you're treating this customer like this? Laura turned, startled by the interruption. Her irritated expression quickly gave way to confusion. She didn't recognize Keanu immediately because of his disguise. Sir, this is none of your concern, Laura replied, attempting to maintain her professional demeanor. Keanu removed his sunglasses, revealing his identity. The reaction was immediate. Laura's eyes widened, and a few customers nearby began whispering as they recognized the Hollywood star. However, Keanu's calm, firm posture didn't waver. He ignored the growing whispers, keeping his focus on Laura. When something like this happens in public, it becomes everyone's concern, he said in a steady voice. So I'll ask you again, why are you treating this customer this way? Sarah, who had remained silent until now, turned to Keanu, her eyes wide with surprise. She couldn't believe he was standing there, standing up for her. For a moment, she felt as though she finally had someone truly on her side. Laura, attempting to recover her composure, responded defensively. Sir, we're just following the bank's protocols. Keanu crossed his arms and locked his gaze on hers. Protocols, he asked, leaning in slightly, or prejudice disguised as bureaucracy. The bank fell into absolute silence. All eyes were on the unfolding scene. Laura opened her mouth to respond, but couldn't find the words. Marcus, noticing the commotion, hurried over to the counter. He tried to defuse the situation, but the nervousness in his demeanor was evident. Is there a problem here? He asked, feigning ignorance. Keanu turned his sharp gaze to Marcus. Yes, there is, he said firmly, pointing toward Sarah. This customer came here to open a savings account. She brought all the necessary documents, and yet you're treating her as though she doesn't belong here. Marcus, trying to maintain control of the situation, replied, Sir, please understand, we're just trying to ensure everything is done correctly. Keanu cut him off. No, what I understand is that you're creating unnecessary obstacles. Why? With every eye on the bank now on him, Keanu picks up Sarah's documents and begins carefully reviewing them. After a moment, he turns back to Marcus and Laura and says in a firm voice, "These documents are correct. So let me ask you one more time. Why aren't you helping this customer?" The bank was utterly silent. All eyes were on Keanu Reeves, standing firm in front of Marcus and Laura. Sarah, still stunned by the unexpected intervention, looked at him with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. She never imagined someone so famous would be there, standing up for her against such injustice. Marcus cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Sir, I understand your concern, but we have clear protocols to ensure the security and efficiency of our services," he said with a forced calmness. "This isn't about discrimination. We're simply following the rules." Keanu held Sarah's documents in his hands. He skimmed through them quickly, lifting one of the pages and pointing to the form. "Protocols?" he asked sharply. "Then tell me what exactly is wrong with these documents. Because from what I see, they're filled out correctly. Everything that's required is here." Laura, now visibly nervous, tried to respond. "Well, sometimes the documents might be filled out, but we need to make sure that the person understands what they're signing." Keanu turned to her slowly, his expression a mixture of disbelief and indignation. "Are you suggesting that this customer, who went to all the trouble of following every step and bringing everything that was requested, doesn't understand what she's doing?" "That's not what I meant," Laura stammered, but her words faltered. "We just want to ensure there are no mistakes." "Mistakes?" Keanu let out a short, humorless laugh. "The only mistake here is how you've treated this woman. You've humiliated her publicly, disregarded her dignity, and now you're trying to justify the unjustifiable. That's unacceptable." The tension in the air was palpable. Other customers in the bank began murmuring, some clearly supporting Keanu, while others stayed silent, absorbing the scene. Marcus, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, tried to redirect the focus. "Mr. Reeves, we're not trying to create a problem. I understand your concern, but this isn't a simple matter. If we could resolve this more discreetly, I'm sure—" Number Keanu interrupted, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. "This won't be resolved discreetly, not when you expose this customer for everyone here to see. The discrimination she faced was public, so the resolution will be public too." Sarah looked at Keanu, feeling courage begin to well up inside her. For the first time, she stood up from her chair and, with a voice still trembling, but filled with determination, said, "I just want to be treated the same as anyone else. I deserve respect. I worked hard to save this money. I followed all the rules. What more do you want from me?" The room fell silent again. Sarah's voice echoed with a strength no one had expected. Keanu turned to her, gave a slight nod of encouragement, and smiled as if to say, "You've got this." Marcus made one more attempt to regain control. "Miss Dawson, please understand. We're not trying to be unfair. It's just that, well, there are situations where additional oversight is necessary." "Additional oversight?" Keanu shot back. "Or just prejudice disguised as bureaucracy? Because so far, all I'm seeing is an institution that prefers to push away customers rather than serve them." Laura glanced at Marcus, waiting for instructions. Marcus sighed, clearly uncomfortable with the growing tension. "Fine. Maybe we can review the documents again and—" "Not maybe," Keanu interrupted firmly. "You will review the documents now, and you will treat this customer with the respect she deserves." Marcus took a deep breath, struggling to maintain his composure. It was evident that he felt cornered. He gestured to Laura, who reluctantly took the papers again and began to review them. Meanwhile, a young woman in line stepped forward and spoke loudly. "I've never seen anything like this. She brought everything she needed, and you're still making it harder? Is this really how you treat people here?" Another person in line agreed. "They do this all the time, always complicating things for the people who need help the most." The situation was quickly turning against the bank. The murmurs grew louder, and Marcus knew he needed to make a decision before things escalated further. After a few minutes of reviewing the documents, Laura finally admitted, her voice barely audible, "There's nothing wrong with the documents. They're correct." Marcus, now completely out of options, looked at Laura with a stern expression, but knew he couldn't pretend anymore. Turning back to Sarah, he forced a smile and said, "It seems everything is in order, Miss Dawson. We'll open your account now." Before Marcus could close the matter, Keanu raised his hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "This doesn't end here. I want to know why you made it difficult from the start. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a pattern, and patterns like this need to change. Right now." The tension in the bank was palpable. Marcus and Laura stood visibly uncomfortable as Keanu held his ground, his piercing gaze fixed on them. Sarah, standing beside him, still clutched her papers, her expression a mix of relief and newfound determination. The murmurs of the customers around them created a rising pressure that neither Marcus nor Laura could ignore. Keanu stepped forward, holding Sarah's documents as if presenting irrefutable evidence in a courtroom. "So, if the documents are correct," he began, his voice resonating through the room, "why did you spend so much time trying to stop this customer from opening an account? I want a clear explanation, and I won't accept protocols as an answer." Marcus cleared his throat, struggling to maintain a professional tone, but the unease in his demeanor was undeniable. "Mr. Reeves, there's no discrimination here. These are simply guidelines we follow to ensure the bank operates efficiently," he said. Keanu arched an eyebrow, his voice tinged with sharp sarcasm. "Guidelines?" He turned to Laura. "Then explain to me how these guidelines justify the condescending tone, interruptions, and public humiliation this customer endured. Because frankly, this looks more like institutional prejudice than efficiency." Laura opened her mouth to respond, but hesitated. Finally, under the weight of Keanu's gaze, Sarah's quiet strength, and the murmuring crowd, she blurted out, "It's not my fault. This is just how we're told to handle situations like this. Customers with special needs or comprehension issues usually take more time." "Take more time?" Keanu repeated, his voice rising slightly. "And because of that, you'd rather push them away than provide them with the same service as anyone else?" Laura averted her gaze and Marcus stepped in to try and regain control. "This isn't an official policy, Mr. Reeves. It's just practices that develop over time to..." "To what?" Keanu cut him off, his indignation clear. "To make your jobs easier? To save a few minutes at the expense of respect and dignity? This practice may not be written down, but it's as real as if it were carved into the walls of this bank." Sarah, emboldened by Keanu's presence, raised her voice toward Marcus for the first time. "So I'm not the only person you've treated this way, am I?" The silence that followed was heavy. More murmurs rippled through the crowd. A man in the line raised his hand and said, "They do this with seniors too. My mom had to come back 3 times because she didn't understand the forms." A woman next to him nodded. "My cousin, who's autistic, went through the same thing. They pretend it's a mistake, but you can tell they just don't want to deal with you." Keanu turned back to Marcus, his eyes blazing. "Are you hearing this? This isn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern, a systemic problem, and you're responsible for perpetuating it." Marcus, now visibly cornered, sighed and ran a hand over his forehead. I I acknowledge that there may be some practices within our team that discourage customers who require more time. It's not official, but it happens. We're dealing with quotas and deadlines, and sometimes that leads to bad choices. Sarah looked at him in disbelief. So that's it? You treat people like me as a burden because you want to save time? Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but Keanu stepped in before he could. This isn't just a problem with this bank. This is a reflection of a society that values efficiency over humanity. But today here, that stops. Marcus exhaled deeply and finally admitted, fine. Yes, there are unspoken practices that develop, and sometimes they lead to discouraging customers who take more time. It's not right, and it needs to change. Sarah's voice, firm and steady, cut through the murmurs. All I wanted was to open my account. It shouldn't have been this hard. I deserve to be treated like anyone else here. The murmurs of agreement grew louder, and Marcus visibly struggled to respond. Laura, looking completely shaken, murmured, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was just following orders. Keanu pointed toward her, his tone firm but calm. Orders you knew were wrong. We all have a choice. Today you made the wrong one. Keanu stepped forward, locking eyes with Marcus and Laura. This isn't over. I'll make sure this story reaches the people who can enforce real change. Because patterns like this, they don't just fade away. They need to be broken, starting now. The silence in the bank was broken by timid applause from a few customers, which soon grew louder. Keanu's words had struck a chord, not only with Marcus and Laura, but with everyone present. Sarah, who had felt so alone and vulnerable just moments ago, now felt the weight of a collective force standing with her. Marcus, trying to maintain his composure, raised his hands as if to calm the room. All right, all right. Let's resolve this now, he said, turning to Laura. Please finalize Ms. Dawson's account immediately. Laura, still flustered, took Sarah's documents and began entering them into the system. Meanwhile, Sarah looked up at Keanu, her timid smile and glistening eyes full of gratitude. Thank you for standing by me, she said softly but sincerely. Keanu smiled back and replied, It wasn't just for you. It was for everyone who has been or will be in your position. You deserve to be treated with respect, Sarah. Never doubt that. As Laura worked, Marcus attempted to regain control of the narrative. On behalf of the bank, I'd like to apologize for everything that happened today. This does not reflect our institution's values. I promise we'll take steps to review our practices. Keanu stared at Marcus for a moment, as if assessing the authenticity of his words before responding. Words are a good start, but actions are what really matter. This isn't just about changing procedures. It's about changing mindsets. The people you underestimate are just as capable as anyone else. And in the end, they're the ones who make the biggest difference. Sarah listened to those words and felt a wave of confidence wash over her. For the first time that day, she felt truly seen and respected. Laura finally completed the process and handed Sarah a receipt. Your account is open, Laura said in a more subdued and even slightly remorseful tone. I'm sorry for the confusion. Sarah took the receipt carefully, holding it like a trophy. She smiled, her eyes brimming with tears, but her expression radiated strength. I did it. Though her words were meant for herself, everyone around her heard them. Marcus turned to Keanu, still attempting to smooth over the situation. I hope we can move past this. We want to learn from our mistakes. Keanu shook his head, his expression serious. Learning is important, but it doesn't erase what happened today. Remember, every customer who walks through these doors has a story, a struggle, and a reason for being here. Respect should be the bare minimum. He turned to Sarah. And Sarah, don't forget this. You are strong and brave. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you truly are. Sarah smiled, feeling more empowered than ever. Thank you. I won't forget. At that moment, one of the customers who had taken a photo of Sarah earlier stepped forward. I want to apologize. When I took that picture, I thought I was just capturing something sad. But now I see that you're an inspiration. You showed more courage today than most people ever will. Sarah thanked him, unsure of how to respond. Keanu, however, looked at the man and said, if you really believe that, share what you learned today. It's not enough to just watch. We all have a role to play. Sarah held the receipt for her newly opened account, feeling stronger than ever. Keanu turned to address everyone in the room with a brief but powerful statement. Respect shouldn't be something you fight to earn. It should be the foundation of any relationship. No matter who we are or where we come from, we all deserve to be treated with dignity. As Keanu left the bank, he turned back one last time to smile at Sarah and give her a small wave. Sarah, now filled with confidence, smiled back, knowing that this day would change her life forever. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.